and welcome to ARIRANG News, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. And these are the stories we're following at this hour. The Korean government pledges to support startups and small and mid-sized businesses this year by providing funds and setting up creative economy centers across the country. A group of ruling party lawmakers from Korea will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye. All eyes are on whether it will contribute to thawing relations between the two countries. An Al-Qaeda affiliate in Yemen claims it was behind last week's terror attack on the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. As the economy-related ministries and agencies presented their action plans for this year to President Park Geun-hye, they pledged to support the country's SMEs and startups with needed funds and so-called creative economy centers. Song Ji-sun has the details.
Innovation and entrepreneurship are the keywords for 2015. 5 government ministries and organizations in charge of science, technologies, and industries put together a blueprint on Thursday to turn Korea into a vibrant creative economy. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning, the Trade Ministry, the Small and Medium Business Administration, and the nation's finance and communications regulators all vowed to follow up with action plans to promote entrepreneurship needed to turn ideas into businesses.
We'll create a dynamic economy where creativity thrives and new businesses are born and grow. The first step is to set up an organic ecosystem conducive to an innovative economy.
One of the government's top projects this year is setting up innovative creative economy centers in 17 industrial sites by June. Each center will specialize in one specific industry based on the strength and characteristics of the local area. One-stop services will be provided at these centers for startups seeking funds, partners, distribution channels, and clients. Seoul is also seeking to make better use of its free trade agreements with other countries to boost growth. The government wants to help companies, especially small and medium-sized businesses, make better use of recently agreed free trade deals, and in particular, the one with China. Seoul will launch a consolidated information platform and set up a China desk, a one-stop service for exporters seeking advice on expanding their outbound shipments. The government is aiming to lock $600 billion in exports and attract $20 billion in foreign direct investment this year, to become an FTA hub and business center for the East Asia region. The government is vying to make collaborative efforts across its ministry so that the Korean economy can take another leap forward this year. If things work out as policymakers plan, ordinary Koreans will feel their society is more innovative and that their lives are getting better by the end of this year. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
In line with President Park Geun-hye's push for an innovative economy, she has vowed to keep Korea front and center of the hyper-connected digital revolution that would build momentum for economic growth for the next 30 years. Son Jung-in reports.
President Park Geun-hye on Wednesday said that Korea will stay at the forefront of the global push to try and connect all objects to the internet, pointing to innovative technologies as top priority.
변화와 발전을 이루어가는 데 있어서 과학기술과 정보방송통신 분야가 혁신과 융합의 플랫폼이 되어야 한다고 생각합니다.
She also vowed to enhance the country's competitiveness by linking key industries including automobile, electronics, and construction to the ICT sector. It's a move that the president believes will push economic growth.
초연결 디지털 혁명에서도 한 발 앞서 나가서 향후 30년의 경제성장 동력을 마련할 수 있도록 정부는 최선을 다해 지원할 것입니다.
Korea is one of the most wired countries in the world. As part of efforts to stay ahead of the IT revolution and promote policies aimed at revitalizing the domestic economy, President Park reinforced her commitment to ease regulations that hinder scientific research, development, and investment. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Over at the National Assembly, rival party and floor leaders gathered for the first time this year and agreed to launch a special committee on political reform. The committee will have its first meeting next month and will deal with such matters as redrawing Korea's electoral districts. Last year, the Constitutional Court ordered lawmakers to redraw the districts by the end of 2015, as some legislators had for far larger constituencies than others. Lawmakers also agreed to pass a long-pending anti-corruption bill that would punish all public officials who receive money or valuables worth more than $920 from outside interest groups. Party leaders failed, however, to advance talks on the formation of a special committee to deal with revising Korea's constitution. Now, a group of Korean lawmakers are currently halfway through a 3-day trip to Japan. The focal point of their time there comes this afternoon, though, as they're expected to hold talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. During their meeting, the Korean lawmakers will deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye herself. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
A South Korean parliamentary delegation will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo on Thursday afternoon in the hope of thawing the two countries' frosty relations. 9 lawmakers, led by the ruling Saenuri Party Supreme Council member Seo Chung-won, are currently on a 3-day visit to Japan. During his meeting with Abe, Seo is expected to deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye in person, which will include a New Year's greeting and detail her hopes for improved ties. The message could also include calls for a shift in Japan's perception of history and the need to resolve Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. President Park had laid these out as preconditions for a summit during her New Year's press conference.
위안부 피해자 할머니들의 경우에는 그분들이 연세가 상당히 높으셔서 이게 조기에 어떤 그 해결책이 나오지 않으면은 영구 미제로 빠질 수가 있다.
The South Korean leader has been adamant that she will not meet one-on-one with Abe until he apologizes for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. In a meeting on Wednesday, lawmakers from the two countries agreed to work on making a summit happen before June 22nd, which marks the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party General Council Chairman Toshihiro Nikai is expected to lead a 1,000-member delegation to South Korea next month. The question now is whether the parliamentary diplomacy will be enough to break the ice between the two neighbors. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Over in the United States, the Republican-led House of Representatives has voted to block large portions of President Barack Obama's immigration policies. This includes Obama's recent executive actions and an earlier program that allowed immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally as children to stay in the country. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
A new clash between the House of Representatives and the White House has cast doubt over funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The U.S. House of Representatives has overturned President Obama's immigration legislation by passing 5 amendments attached to the Homeland Security budget that the White House has said it will refuse to sign if they are attached. The department's funding is set to expire at the end of next month. The House voted for the legislation, which provides roughly $40 billion to fund the department for the rest of the year, including border security and counterterrorism measures. To that legislation, the House attached amendments that will undo actions backed by an executive order issued by Obama in November, providing temporary deportation relief and offering work permits to some 4 million illegal immigrants. Another amendment attached is aimed at canceling legislation the Obama administration passed in 2012 that has provided work permits and deferred deportation actions for more than 600,000 immigrants who arrived in the U.S. as children. The amendment was voted down 218 to 209. The legislation will now be sent to the Senate, where Republicans, who have 54 seats, will have to gather a 60-vote majority to pass it. Democratic leaders say the Republican provisions will hurt immigrant families and hurt the GOP in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has claimed responsibility for the attack on the satirical French magazine Charlie Hebdo. That announcement prompted France to arrest dozens of people who have defended last week's attacks. Connie Kim reports.
The Yemeni branch of Al-Qaeda claims it was behind last week's deadly terror attack on the satirical French publication Charlie Hebdo. Appearing on a video posted online, the top commander of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Nasser al-Ansi, said the killings were retaliation for the magazine's depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. He added the former leader of the Al-Qaeda group, Anwar al-Awlaki, had masterminded the attack years ago. Al-Awlaki was killed in a U.S. drone strike in 2011 and is known to have inspired jihadi militants in the U.S. and Britain. Washington has confirmed the video is authentic, but they're still looking into the claims made by Nasser al-Ansi. On the same day the video emerged, French President François Hollande announced France was dispatching its nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, Charles de Gaulle, to the Gulf to aid in global efforts to defeat Islamic State militants in Iraq.
Today, the situation in the Middle East justifies our aircraft carrier's presence. So thanks to the Charles de Gaulle, we will have precious intelligence.
Hollande added that if needed, French jets could conduct more operations in Iraq. France was the first country to join the U.S.-led airstrikes against IS militants. And back in France, authorities there arrested 54 people on Wednesday for defending last week's terror attacks. Comedian Dieudonné Mbala is one of the detained on potential charges of glorifying terrorism in a post he made on Facebook. The comedian and the other people that were arrested are not suspected of being involved in last week's attacks, raising questions about whether the French government is infringing on the freedom of speech. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The Bank of Korea has decided to keep its key interest rate steady at 2% for another month while market expectations mount over another rate cut early this year. The central bank also downgraded its growth outlook for this year to 3.4%. Shin Se-min reports.
Following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Thursday, the Bank of Korea kept its key rate unchanged at 2% in January, continuing its wait-and-see approach for a third straight month. It also cut its growth outlook for the Korean economy for this year by half a percentage point to 3.4%. The BOK governor said that the lower outlook is largely attributed to a weak economic performance in the fourth quarter of last year, both domestically and on the export front.
The lowered growth outlook for this year is due to a string of unprecedented factors seen in the fourth quarter of last year. A lack of tax revenue and a drop in government spending contributed to the sluggish growth in the last quarter.
The BOK's decision to maintain the rate comes as the government focuses on structural reforms to pull the economy out of its low-growth rut rather than short-term measures. And further lowering the key rate would also prompt concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. The central bank cut the rate twice last year in August and October, each by 0.25 percentage point. The rate cuts were in line with the government's effort to boost a feeble domestic economy, leaving the country's base rate at a historic low that hasn't been seen since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. Market analysts suggest, however, that the BOK will likely cut the rate sometime in the first quarter of the year, given the grim outlook for the nation's economic growth. The analysts cite a weak domestic economic sentiment and a low inflation rate as the reasons for their predictions. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Staying in the domestic front, 6 out of 10 women in their 40s and 50s are now back in the working world here in Korea as the current Park administration continues its push to improve labor market conditions for women who left their jobs after marriage or giving birth. It's definitely a good sign, but looking closely into the numbers, it's not all good news. Kim Ji-yeon tells why.
More women in their 40s and 50s are returning to the workforce. In fact, Statistics Korea says the employment rate for this group was at its highest in 16 years in December. The employment rate for women in their 40s stood at over 65%, up 0.6 percentage points from the same month the previous year. The employment rate for women in their 50s was near 61%. That means approximately 6 out of 10 middle-aged women in Korea have a job. This comes amid a drop in the employment rate for men in the same age group. Some say the increase in the female employment rate for this group should be viewed as somewhat positive, arguing the government's efforts to encourage companies to hire more flexible part-timers have borne fruit. A flexible part-timer is someone who works for the same pay and benefits as an employee engaged to work full-time, but works in the morning or afternoon for 4 hours a day. Others say things aren't as rosy as they look, saying the kinds of jobs these women have may not be of high quality and offer low job security and wages. They also point to a dismal economic situation that has prompted women to work because their households are facing an uncertain retirement because of a decrease in household income. Real wage increases have remained in the 0% range for 2 straight quarters, leading up to the July to September period of last year. Kim Jeon, ARIRANG News.
If you're a fan of K-pop, you may be interested in visiting this place. One of Korea's largest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, has just opened a multicultural complex where you can get the ultimate K-pop experience. You can even watch a hologram of your favorite artist singing and dancing right in front of you. Connie Lee gives us a look.
In Seoul's trendy Gangnam district, there's a new cultural complex where you can soak up the full K-pop experience. It's called SM Town at COEX Artium. Take a look inside. Built by one of Korea's biggest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, this 6-story multicultural space cost about $23 million. For the opening ceremony, K-pop stars like EXO, Girls' Generation, and Super Junior lined the red carpet, with the fans clearly excited to get even a brief glimpse of them. The center boasts some high-tech features like a touchscreen jukebox and items from SM artists themselves.
I believe it's time to show our content in a new way to the world, with our unique entertainment space.
And the highlight of this complex may be its state-of-the-art hologram stage, Korea's first. Called School Oz, this hologram musical premiered on Wednesday, starring SM artists on huge displays, covering the audience with 270 degrees of visuals.
There was a lot of preparation for this hologram musical. I had to put a lot more effort into how I acted, so it goes well with the hologram effects.
The complex is topped off with a souvenir shop, a cafe, and studios where you can actually make a music video or record an album. Or if you're not ready for that yet, you can receive vocal training from actual SM staff members. Ready for the limelight or not, the new complex is sure to attract the K-pop fans from all over the world to Korea. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And these days, with so many smartphones, smart screens, so much technology embedded in our lives, media art has become more relevant. And our Im Yoon-hee has a look at how media art is quickly reaching into all aspects of our lives. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So media art actually has been around for over 100 years, but it's not until the past couple decades or so where media art really became a strong presence in the art community. Now media art ranges anywhere from low-grade technology such as photography to very complex, complicated animation or computer graphics. Now, as with other genres of art, media artists have responded to current affairs, and today I have a look at a few artists who have a message to share with their work.
We live in an era where there are more television screens than people, more lights to illuminate the dark. So it's no surprise that the art community has responded, using today's technology to produce media art.
And though we've progressed, one age-old feud has remained: the complicated political relationship between Korea, China, and Japan. But for many, art holds the ability to heal. And when paired with soft power, the idea of attracting and persuading relations rather than forcing, a beacon of hope is born. But how can a creation of the imagination lead to peace?
In the many genres of art, media art is an especially valuable and relevant tool for us to voice our opinions. This exhibition was put together by 3 curators and features the work of 10 artists from Korea, China, and Japan. If you take a look at the works, you'll see that there's definitely a difference between the 3 countries. And while the subject matter may be similar, Chinese artists are very direct in delivery, while Japanese artists take a more abstract approach, and Korean artists sit somewhere in the middle. Artist Miao Xiaochun used computer graphics to make animations for his large projection screen piece. You'll notice there are Asian-themed images, skillfully mixed with ideas from Western culture. The result is a fusion work coming from a very balanced point of view that suggests a new positive image of Asia. In the 21st century, we're at a paradigm shift, and some recurring keywords are diversity, global mobility, and convergence. Media art is progressing at such a rapid pace and is spreading like wildfire throughout the world. So the gap between the artist and the audience is shrinking. In fact, the two are basically converging. Right now we're seeing a lot of projector use, but later we might see more of OLED screens, or even portable technology like smart pads, all of which can be used in media art. The Industrial Revolution originated in the West, but the digital age is being led by the East. The presence of so many technology facilities and plants in Korea and Japan means that digital media art won't be far, with many valuable opportunities to seize available here in Asia.
I mean, because technology is advancing so fast, the future of these media art looks so bright, I guess.
Right, a lot of opportunities, especially now with the introduction of 3D printers. The curator told me that's another aspect that has really influenced media art, and it's opened so many new doors to all different types of art, because 3D printers nowadays can print organs, it can print, almost anything, and so artists are really taking advantage of that. And the curator actually told me, he said that the 3D printer could potentially revolutionize media art.
But I guess many artists would be concerned about the pirating and illegal distribution of their artworks, I guess.
So that is an issue that I asked about, and the curator mentioned that that's something that all art has to deal with, but in particular media art, in particular video art, that's something that nowadays with YouTube can just go viral online. But he said that there's an original copy that the artist does sign and give to the person who purchased it or the museum. And when a copy is made, he said the quality falls down. So like with all replicas, even like a painting, when you make a replica, nothing really beats the original. And so similar to traditional forms of art, media art also has the original.
So that's a way to prevent those side effects, I guess. Thank you for coming in, Uni.
You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. We'll be having generally bright and comfortable weather today, with daytime highs ranging between 5 to 11 degrees Celsius, which are numbers we usually see during the early spring. And we can also expect a cloudy day all across the country, and it will most likely stay hazy due to the mix of fog and dust, and also the rain continues along the east coastal regions until the late afternoon. Now, there are high levels of fine dust, so that's another thing to keep in mind, and especially for those of you in Gyeonggi-do, Chungcheong-do, and Jeollabuk-do provinces where high levels are expected. Now to our readings for today. Seoul will be at 8 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will higher at 10 and 11 degrees. And moving over to other regions such as Jeju Island gets up to 10 as well, while Dokdo hits down to 5, while Mangungang is murky and reaches to -3 degrees. That's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Michelle. And that wraps up our newscast. More updates coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time. Thank you for staying with us.